Hmong-ish is a podcast produced by Hmong American Media located in Sacramento, California, and sponsored by the Hmong Organizing for Progress and Empowerment Center, Hope Center, along with Culture Through Cloth. I'm your host, Sean.
And I'm your host, Pachia. And we are Hmong-ish.
Hmong-ish is a podcast where Pachia and I share our thoughts on anything and all things Hmong, diving into our own personal experiences of what it means to be Hmong American and Hmong in today's time.
Today, we are going to be talking about shamanism, specifically Hmong shamanism, for those of you who might not know the Hmong practice shamanism. And I'm really excited because we actually have our first guest on the show, who is herself a shaman. I've known Susan for maybe a few years now. She is a distinguished master shaman. She also holds a master's degree in education. And she has been practicing shamanism now for the past 14 years. And so she's traveled all throughout the U.S. She's also traveled in Southeast Asia, helping to heal and educate people about her gift as a shaman. And she is also the founder of Uplift the Human Spirit, which is a nonprofit organization that works to empower and unify the Hmong people, preserving Hmong language, culture, and religion. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so today we're going to be really talking to you about what Hmong shamanism is. Also hoping to dive more into some of the specifics about who you are as a shaman and share with our listeners maybe some of the cases that you encounter and help people with.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. So maybe we can start with you telling us just a little bit more about what shamanism is.
Okay. Shamanism is not a religion, it's a practice very common amongst animism religion. So most cultures that are indigenous, they do practice shamanism. So not just Hmong, but there's a lot of other ethnicities that also practice shamanism. And shamanism is basically the belief in a practitioner, which is called the shaman, and the shaman is the kind of like the mediator between both worlds, the living and the spirit world. And not only do we mediate or communicate with both worlds, trying to balance it, we also try to heal people and also spirits, by the way, along the way. So that's what shamanism is.
Very
Wow, very interesting. So you said a lot of shamanism are practiced in cultures that believe in animism, and animism
is a religion. I caught that too. Yes. I'm like, wow, tell us more about that.
Tell us more about
animism as a religion.
So animism, for a lot of Western scholars, they basically name all of the indigenous people animism.
That's
so
true.
These are very old ancient beliefs,
right,
which you find more common with Native Americans or any indigenous tribe in any country.
Yeah.
So and animism basically is the belief of being one with Mother Nature, where everything has a spiritual energy. We have to be kind. All life matters. So very Eastern, if you want to label it, very Eastern ways of thinking. Okay. So if you relate it that way, but animism is basically that, the belief of all natural phenomenon having some sort of spirit or spiritual energy.
Interesting.
Oh, very interesting. Let's dive in to know more about you, Susan. So how did you become a shaman?
So shamanism for most cultures is the same, but for Hmong culture, it may be different from other cultures. So I'm talking about how me or for the Hmong culture. So how did I become a shaman? For the Hmong culture, normally what we call is we go through this shaman sickness, or mon nang na, that's what we call it. So these are unexplainable sickness, and it varies, and everybody is really different. For me, per se, it was I was in my college years and starting to hear voices and unexplainable illnesses where you go to the doctors and they're basically saying you're absolutely fine and it's all in your head. And after 2-3 years of that, and we'll get into the mind, body, spirit. So after the doctors couldn't really discover what was going on with me, we went to several shamans actually. And then what you would do was try to get a reading or shayai to see what was wrong with you, since the doctors don't know what's wrong with you. And after that, what you do is, after the shayai, or actually the diagnosis from a spiritual practitioner, and if they recognize that you do have the capability of becoming a shaman, then a shaman has to be ready, or willing, that's the word I'm looking for, willing to take you in. So you can't just kind of really like one day wake up and say, you know what, I think I'm a shaman today. You can't, like, someone else has to recognize and say that you do have the ability to. And then that's exactly my story. And then I finally found my master and it fit, and here I am since then, 14 years.
I know that every shaman, to my understanding, kind of has their own practice. So can you share more about like your philosophy or your practice, what type of shamanism that you practice?
For our culture, it's very different. So we kind of separate it in two categories, where it's the New Age, or Neng Chia, Neng Shao, and then also the Old Age, or the Neng Zigong, which is ever since the beginning of time that they've been practicing. I think for the philosophy, I think most of us is like about the same, where we're about like healing and just helping people in general. For me per se, it's just really helping people in general, regardless of gender, race, or religion.
After like you realize that, you know, you were kind of on this journey of becoming a shaman, like what were some of the trials and tribulations that you went through, or were there any trials and tribulations?
Well, first and foremost, I didn't really grow up in a spiritual or religious family. So my dad was like a stickler on, you know, you get what you put in, right? And so everything was the belief of, if you don't see, you don't believe. And so growing up like that, and very like scientific, I used to major in pre-med. So like super scientific. The hardest thing for me, besides, and we'll get into that later, but the hardest thing for me was proving to myself that I was gifted and that I can do this. Contrary to belief, we don't have anybody in our family that's a shaman. And usually the elders always talk about, oh, it's in your family, your grandma, your dad, your uncle, anybody. But for us, if you trace back 4 or 5 generations on both sides, my mom or my dad, we don't have any shamans in our family.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of backlash and a lot of like,
In your family?
Yeah, in my family, both my mom's side and my dad's side. So not just my family, but relatives, even other people, but absolutely from our family, relatives also, because it just wasn't common, and that wasn't how it, like Itsu is, or how it always was.
But you said you received backlash too?
Yes, definitely. Because I call it 3 strikes. So when you think of a shaman in our culture, people think about an older man who's traditional. And being born here, I was young, I was single, not married, and also I was, you know, a woman. So the backlash of like, who does she think she is? Why does she want to sit at and I've heard it all. Well, why does she want to sit at tables with men and things like that? But in reality, I was still going through my journey like, wait, is this real? I grew up here, I was born here. I've never really seen you know, like a Ning performance at my house, maybe twice when I was like 6, right? But like it wasn't common. So and again, remember this is 14 years ago, so it wasn't as common as it is nowadays, where I see a lot of women or a much younger generation, like in their 20s or even in their teens, that are doing it. And back then when I started, I'm not saying that there wasn't any, but it was just very rare, and not even just the younger shamans, but I didn't even really see any women shamans. When I became one, I only knew of 2 shamans that were women. So it was a different time. It was really difficult becoming one.
For those of us who don't know, like for me, and I go to a or name to call somebody, right? How would I pick up the cue to know that, oh, no, her name Chiao, my name Gu.
Okay. Okay. Very good question.
That is a great question. I wouldn't know either.
I wrote about this on my blog. No.
Oh, you have a blog. Good to know.
But for Ning Chen also, let me be very careful here because I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And there is a lot of dilemma here, like just disagreements between the Ning or we call the old shamans and the new shamans, literal translation. And the proper way of saying is Ning Zigong, or that means the Ning ancestors. And the Ning Chia, they kind of just lump everyone in together, which just means New Age Ningna, which isn't really fair because they're so different. But because it's new, it's just like, okay, you're all part of the New Age. So it varies and it's super different. So the difference, and don't always assume, but right away you can tell from their outfits. Okay. And so I would say like 3/4 of the time, if you see a shaman with, doesn't really matter the outfit because it depends if they're green or white and how their sect is also. But if they're their Hmong outfit and if they have a black veil or hood, however you want to call it, now normally that signifies that Neng or the old age Neng ancestor. Okay. It's not always true, so don't always assume. Okay. But majority of the time, that's how you tell. And if it's Neng Chia, they're different. You can see them. Some of them wearing like the outfit it varies. It can be all white, but normally if the hood is not black, it can be white. It can be most commonly it's red. Okay. Red or white, even sometimes yellow. That definitely signifies that Ning Shou or the Ning Chia, the New Age Ning.
That's interesting that you can tell by clothing because, I study clothing. I'm like, ding, 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 interesting.
That's another research topic.
I know, another research topic.
Understanding shamanism through their clothing.
Through their clothing. Yeah. So you practice a type of New Age shamanism then.
Correct.
And can you tell us more? So my understanding of shamans, they have shaman guides. And so when you say like, Neng Zigao, Zigong, meaning ancestors, then that means that the shaman guides come from the ancestors. Is that correct?
No, we just call that because it's how it's been since the beginning of time. So the whole traditional belief, if it has to be from your ancestors, it has to be part of your lineage. Okay. So ancestors, Zigong, it has to be part of your lineage. Every shaman,
meaning that you have shamans in your lineage,
in your family, yes, in your lineage. Okay. So from ancestors, from your lineage.
Interesting. Wow.
And then, so for the spiritual guides, no shaman can exist without spiritual guides. Okay. You can't just
in Hmong shamanism.
In Hmong shamanism, okay. Yes. So you have to have spiritual guides to enable to guide you, because there's no way that I can know what happened at your house 3 months ago when I've never met you. It has to be the spirits or the spirits and the energy around you that tells me that happened. So that's why we're able to draw from that. Otherwise, a normal person wouldn't be able to tell you that.
When you become a shaman, how do you know what spirit guides are good to keep?
It's not your job to do that. It's the duty of your master that does that. So when you're to become a master shaman, you have to have students of your own. So when I do have a new student shaman, what we do is we have to go in, we look at what they do, we guide them, teach them, mentor them, and the spirits that I can't say that they're not good. It's more, if you think about like Nangna, it's more like a public service, right? So if you're going to do a public service speech, you want to choose the ones that are more mellow, right? And so I can't say that those spiritual guides aren't good. It's more of like they're kind of naughty or they speak their mind too much, right? So then if you leave them, you don't want them to create chaos amongst the people that the shaman is helping or so. So it's more of what we do is we separate them, or in our language in Hmong, we call it li, which means filter. So we filter out, so we only leave the good spiritual or the tamed, I should say, spiritual guides with our students, and then the other ones that are not yet tamed yet, what we do is we send them back to heaven or where they come from, and then they relearn, and then when they're up to par, they can come back, and then some they don't, and they just stay up there. So it's a longer process, but that's the duty of the your master.
How do you know if you're capable to, or the level of name that you are supposed to do? Is it communicated through your spirit guides, or is just a task that you're like trial and error? Is it your guides telling you like back off, don't do this, or
It's a combination of everything. I, along with very similar to your aunt, where most of my cases they are super heavy. I used to joke and call myself like the last resort girl, because normally when the cases, by the time they come to me, I'm like the third or fourth shaman that's trying to help the people already. I do get other cases, but majority of my cases are that way. So what happens is, in the beginning, no one knows anything. Your master will try to guide you as much as possible, but then it's like self-discovery. And also they'll give you guidelines like, okay, if you're on the first level or second level, you shouldn't do this type of nang yet, or you shouldn't handle this type of case yet. But for me, because my master felt that I was okay, I was only practicing probably about 3 months, and she basically said, do what you need to do. And so like when your master kind of gives you the A-OK or permission to do what you need to do, then it's like kind of free for all. And so ever since I've been practicing for approximately 5 months, I've been helping outsiders. Because another thing about shamans is that we have to start in-house, and you're not permitted to help outsiders, even if they're the same. Like, let's say it's your sister, but she's married and now she's part of like the Lee clan or the Tao clan, and she's
so
no longer
in-house meaning within your clan, immediate family.
Yeah, and yes, and within your clan and the same nakona, so lineage.
Okay.
So even if they're the same last name, but nakochiyana, then you can't even practice that in the beginning until a certain level, and until your master says.
Oh,
yes,
that's
you
interesting.
can.
Okay. So can you tell us more about your abilities? Because you kind of mentioned that, it took you a while to kind of figure out if these abilities were real or not. And so what are your abilities?
So I wear a lot of hats. In the beginning, it's a little bit different. In the beginning, it was just me accepting the fact that this is even real, that spirituality and spirits even existed. Because remember, my mindset was scientific. If you can't see it, it's not true. Mm-hmm. So I had to really kind of jump through that hoop, and also being not being different from American mainstream and how we grew up. I always wanted it to be to fit in, right? And so then when this kind of came on me, I had to like do a 180 and really study myself and to see if this is real. Because a lot of people, because I didn't have the lineage of shamanism in my family, a lot of people were saying that it was fake. And me, if obviously you know me, I don't like anything like fake or wrong, and then me portraying this out into the world that I'm a shaman when it's fake, because it's not in my lineage. So when discovering myself was more of that. It wasn't necessarily my gifts, because at that time we weren't aware yet. Every shaman is very different. With their niche and whatever they're like comfortable in doing. So with me, I do the whole gamma. So not every shaman is comfortable with, for example, herbs or massaging or things like that. So I do all of the above. Not only do I perform Neng performances and rituals and hupli and stuff like that, I do a lot of like massage. Or if you think of an old Hmong grandma, deep plage, mocho, that's me. That's me. I do all of that. And then also I do a lot of the energy practices, such as, a lot of people commonly know as like Reiki or energy work, so all of the above. So if you name it, I might say so that I do wear that hat.
Okay.
What are some things that, you want the people to know about shamanism?
First and foremost, I kind of want to touch a little base on the history of shamanism. And shamanism is, with cave writings and all this evidence, it's approximately 50,000 years old. So with that, we've stand the test of time. And with something that ancient, that old, nowadays there are things that, we do need to change and kind of progress with time. But then again, we have, as the Hmong community, I do want to speak about not just disregarding or like doing away with it. I hear that a lot, especially from the ladies also, because there's a lot of misunderstanding that we don't really talk about and that we don't understand. So when you don't understand about something, then you don't care about it. So what I want everyone to know is that as a human being, there are 3 pillars that make us strong and whole. And that's the mind, body, spirit that we've been hearing so much about. And so if you think about it, psychiatrists or therapists, they're responsible for the mind or the mental part. And doctors, physicians are responsible for our physical being. And so shamans, we're responsible for the spirituality side. So if any of these pillars were to collapse, the person would eventually, pass on. So these 3 pillars have to be safe and strong. So with shamanism and shamans, actually, that's where people come to me when they need spiritual healing, spiritual help. So no matter how physically tough and strong you are, and no matter how mindful and how mentally strong you are, if you're lacking in the spiritual department, eventually you'll start getting sick, and then the other pillars will start to collapse with it. So that's what I want people to know, that it's not something that you can do away without, and that you can just forget about the spiritual side, because we were created mind, body, spirit. And I think that's for the whole, everybody also that's non-Hmong also. Of that, it doesn't have to be a shaman, but with shamans, we are practitioners, or spiritual practitioners, as I call it. So anybody can come to us for help. You don't have to be of a certain religion or faith or ethnicity. You can be anybody, and you come and the shamans who are comfortable will definitely help you.
I always find that explanation of mind, body, spirit really fascinating. I think it's like a great way to sort of break down understanding the role of shamans as spiritual healers, or like helping to provide spiritual guidance. And kind of like circling back to you said you don't have to be like Hmong, and I know that you work with like folks who aren't Hmong too all of the time. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So before I started doing this full time, I had my day job. I would come home, and at first it was just like, Hmong people or the people of the community. And then eventually there are more and more cars and a lot more different ethnicities and people and strangers eventually coming to my house. And then so that's why I opened my clinic or my office, the Healing Life Center, where anybody of all walks of life will feel comfortable coming to an office sitting and not necessarily to my house, you know, and so that it doesn't feel so, what's the word, like shady, or it doesn't feel so awkward, right? Because there's that trust element to it, because they want me to dwell into their life or their illnesses, and it's very personal. So
it's more of a professional setting almost.
Right.
You have your own office space.
And also that trust, right?
Yeah.
And so that it doesn't feel so
odd that you're just going to someone's house.
Someone's living room.
Which might not be normal for folks who aren't Hmong, maybe.
Right. The past a year or two, actually, I've had a lot of my clients have actually been Muslims. Okay. So then they would, and we all know they're very religious and spiritual, and so that actually surprised me when there's this great influx of them coming to me to seek help.
They were looking for this type of spiritual help.
Right.
I think within the Hmong community, there may already say that, oh, no, was something that's totally undoable. Who opens up an office to Shining? But then I think it's, how do we bring shamanism into the 21st century, right? And this may be it, you know? And so do you face any backlash, prejudice from the community about, like, your new modern practices that you're incorporating into shamanism? Or have you or have you not? And then also any prejudices from the community that are non-Hmong, but like you're saying, you get a lot of non-Hmong clients now too because of that.
Yeah. When I first started, I'm a little ashamed to admit this, but it's true. When I first started, I started it more as a like a body work massage place. I kind of,
And this is the Healing Life Center.
this is the Healing Life Center, because I felt like I was afraid that people weren't ready for a shaman to say, hey, this is my practice. So and at this time, I was already a shaman for about 6 or 7 years already. So then after I kind of got people in for like body work, massage, they're in pain, they're going to see me. So then after that, then we started talking about energy work, and they were open to that. And then that was when probably I was already in business for like having, I don't want to call it clinic because it's taboo for our community. But so I think it was like probably the 3rd year already when I kind of came out and said, I don't want to deny this part of me anymore, and I don't want to hide it. So the 3rd year that I had my clinic, I was full blown out disclosure. I'm a shaman, whether you like it or not. And if you want to see me, great. And if you don't, just being unapologetic of who I was. So it's not common that I'm aware of. You can't really search like shaman and they're like, oh, she has a clinic. Even nowadays, the business license and everything known me as a holistic practitioner, which is fine because some people aren't comfortable with the whole aspect with the term of shaman. And it goes back to the like the misconceptions or the not understanding of what shamans are, because we're so old. People think of us, if you practice the traditional Hmong religion, people think of us as being backwards, right? Being like a traditionalist, like we hate women, like, and things like that. And I want people to know that I can't speak for all, but there are a lot of us that have progress also along with time, with modern times. And again, having people come to my living room, like not only is it awkward for the clients, but me, myself, I'm inviting all these strangers and guests from all over the state, really. Some people are from the Bay Area, LA. People were coming from all over, and they're in my living room, and this is pre-COVID.
Your home, too.
Right. This is pre-COVID, so it wasn't that scary yet. But now that I think about it, so I don't regret opening a clinic, but definitely the first 2 years within my community, there was kind of, they were kind of saying, wait, like, is that okay? And definitely the more traditional elders did kind of say, well, are you doing it for business? But in my eyes, I didn't see it as I was doing it for money. In my eyes, I was saying it was more of, here's my place that I can help you, and you can come to me comfortably and not in my living room where my parents are listening, or so that there's this like privacy, and also just respecting people's space.
Have you talked to other shamans and they've opened up their own spaces like that too, or like most of your colleagues, are they still practicing at home?
I am not aware of anybody that has opened a clinic for people. I've heard of other people like having organizations, but most of them are still based from home or a place. So I don't know if anybody else, so inform me if I'm wrong, but that has a clinic that are shaman, that is a shaman.
I think I've heard of another shaman temple here in Sacramento, but I'm not as familiar with their work. United Hmong Shaman Temple.
One of the misconceptions about us who still utilizes a shaman, they say, oh, they da, right? And I was like, wow, that is a misconception. But you don't da, is maybe you could say we carry on the old traditions where they always label us into, oh, da. So it's like, wait, how can you say and and so I think it's that negative
almost
stigma.
like that term is a stereotype against
against people already that, hey, your culture,
is backwards.
And then it goes back to being like, okay, if we that is bad, why do we call it da? Our spirits are ghosts, And it's like, wait, it's not. Maybe they're ghosts. So I think that.
No, I love it that you brought that up because
needs to be addressed as well too.
Let's address it right now.
Yeah.
A lot of my seminars that I do offer to educate people and enlighten them on our culture and also shamanism is the very second or slide that I have all the time for Hmong speaking audience. And so let's get into what the word da means, okay? So prime example, and let's say you have a suitcase and you're packing, you're going to Bora Bora. And I go, Pachia, suitcase, right? Or
Dachi.
I'm not saying, oh, there's a monster sitting in your suitcase. So the word dana, it just means something invisible. Okay, it just means something invisible. But because nowadays, being here in America, and we speak English, and we don't truly understand all the words that we
Our
use
language
anymore.
as much anymore.
So most of the time, when our parents say, "Oh, there's a da," right? We're like, "Oh, monster." So
Ghost.
there's yes, right. So there's a bad connotation that Hmong-ish have put on that
To the
word,
da.
right?
Yeah.
But when the elders say "big dot dana," it just means that we're spiritual because we believe in the unforeseen. So it's not bad.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. We believe in the unforeseen.
Absolutely. So that's another thing. So I hope that more and more people will understand the word da, because I get that over and over and over. So it just means that we're going to go and bring an ancestor that has deceased to come and like protect us, right? We don't mean that we're going to go and pick up a demon and he's going to come and
Oh my God.
right? But that's what every youngster believes when they talk to me. Yeah. And so no, we don't do that. As shamans, we kill and we defend.
That's a great example of how we're losing touch with like our culture and our language, right? Because we grew up here in the U.S., so Loludanaje for us is very like scary, like, oh my God, da, monster, ghost. So it becomes very scary, but we lose like connection to all these other aspects of what that word means. And now we've only carried on these negative aspects. But it's interesting to go back and look at it to really expand the understanding that it actually means invisible, which I never knew. That's amazing. That's very interesting.
But you've heard the term, right?
Of course.
Dachi,
what is it? Like,
very, very good way to look at it.
I'm just fascinated by how, you heal and you work with communities that aren't Hmong, and I'm fascinated by so many things that you do. But since that's the first thing on my mind, like, can you talk more about that? Like, you said that, recently within the past few years, you've been getting a lot of Muslim clients. And so, is there anything more that you want to say? Like, that's fascinating because, they come from a religion that, they believe in Allah. And so how does that, like, from my understanding, a lot of these monotheistic religions only, they don't necessarily reach out to like pagan healers or shamans. And so what has that been like?
So let me backtrack a little.
Okay.
When I started, I never once thought that when I became a shaman, I was going to heal people of other faiths or even ethnicity. I really thought it was just going to be like, okay, just let me try to heal my family. And then if other people from our Hmong community comes and help, maybe them. So it was really fascinating for me when I started getting like, for example, like Vietnamese and Chinese. They were the first ones that started coming. And other races started coming after them. And I was amazed. I was just amazed and awe, really, that that very event proved to me that my gift is not just particularly just for the Hmong community, that it's universal. And so then that kind of goes back to the mind, body, and spirit. If you have a spirit, I can help you, basically. And so then that not just for other people, but for me, it broke down barriers and walls where in the beginning it was just like, okay, they're not Hmong, then we can't help them. Even though, sometimes it's as simple as blessed water or just a string, and that we know that in our culture we can help them, but because they're of a different faith or ethnicity, that we can't because of that. And then when they started coming to me, I didn't have a choice. I was just like, okay, they're here. Let me just do this thing, right? And then because when they came to me, the first case that came to me that was not Hmong, was he was in his early 20s and he was not able to walk, but the doctors did not know what was wrong. And so long story short, we figured that it was a spiritual component, all spiritual. And so after the blessed water and the string, he was able to walk within a week. So that nowadays you can't tell that he was like that, but again, mind, body, spirit, because it was mainly spiritual. So obviously if he had other disorders, then that would not have happened. So let me clarify that. So, I mean, so then that made me realize like, wow, like I can see this. This is not something that we can kind of say, oh, it's like something in your mind, right? Like he thought it, he believed it. So maybe he was just able to walk, because when he came to me, he wasn't able to walk for close to 12 years before he saw me. So, I mean, just things like that. So, after that, there are definitely certain things that you need to change if they're not from the community. So for example, numbing performances, if you've never seen something before, it can scare you or it can make you not feel comfortable. So for example, if they do need a numbing performance, then I would rather they, like, let's say, give me a shirt and I do that at my house, and then we'll do the spiritual healing. If I can bypass a numbing performance with, let's say, blessed water or just energy work, or just kind of like, you know, holding, but kind of listen to their veins or so, right? Their artery, the heart. Yeah. So I mean, just things like the old, very old traditional Chinese technique. So just things like that. So with other cultures, you have to definitely be a lot more sensitive to where they're coming from. Okay. So with the Muslims, when they first came to me, the first one came about like 5-6 years ago, but it's just the past about 2 years that there was a lot of them that are coming. So even for them, and some of the most of them are repeat customers, but some of them are new. And when they come to me, they're not comfortable at all. But okay. And they don't come to me and go, you know what, here's my issue and you deal with it. No, they come to me and they're super cautious, and they always go, in our culture we can do this, but we can't do that. Okay. And I always I'm always super respectful, and then I ask them, what's the scope that I can help you with? Okay. What are you comfortable with? Sure. It doesn't matter if I can do this or that way. What are you comfortable with? And what is it that you're looking for for me? And then so from me, and when they tell me that, and then I know and I see what I can do to help them in their comfort level. And sometimes if I need to push a little, I'll push a little, but majority of the time I'm very respectful. So that's how, that happens. And that's how I'm able to help these clients, because by the time that, and majority of the time when they're at my door, remember, I called myself the last resort girl. So by the time that they're in my clinic, normally they've been trying, like I'm like the 5th spiritual practitioner or somebody. So then they feel like there's no hope, and they try, and so then they're trying to come and to see if anything will help them. And also when I am able to, then that's when words get out, and that's when they
tell other people.
Yeah, they tell other people. And most of these clients who are not from the same background, like Baina, they actually question their faith a lot after me, because they always tell me that we're taught like only this type can heal us and this type can heal, but you're not. So why is it that you can help me when you're not from my religion? And that question is very common, very, very common, that I would get after I help someone. And this is my answer to them, and also everyone who's listening, is that it doesn't matter what and who you believe in, we all are a part of the human race. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier. If you have a spirit and you have spirituality, I can definitely help you.
How do your clients approach you?
They don't need to provide anything. They just need to come and set an appointment, obviously, just like any regular office if you're going to visit. So you just set an appointment, you just come. If the people are of our community, Hmong community, they definitely feel better if they want to bring incense, chocolate paper, the whole gamut. And that's okay. That's okay. They can. But I don't require it just for everybody's sake. It's a lot easier because a lot of the youngsters nowadays, it's a lot harder for them to know what to buy. So that's how I do it.
Along the lines of you breaking barriers and kind of like moving shamanism forward in some way and sense, like you're a female shaman, and so you've kind of mentioned already that like you've had to work within the bounds of patriarchy, which we've talked about on this show, and how that creates limitations for women in within Hmong culture. And in some of our conversations, you have mentioned that you've sort of helped women and helped to heal women from this sort of patriarchal society. So can you expand on that and talk a little bit more? Because I think that's just so fascinating to some of the questions I have about like how do we move Hmong culture forward?
Okay. That's definitely, since the beginning, I definitely felt that it was my duty to change it for the better. I'm practicing. This is my field. It is my, duty. I have to do this for those who are coming behind me and for those already who are a part of the culture. So first and foremost, the first thing that people, that I didn't really think that would have so much effect on women, but me being the shaman, and after the name performance, like we all sit on the same table. So what I normally do is I kind of like bring in some of the other ladies too, and I have so many women crying to me like, I thought that I would never see this in my lifetime, seeing like women and men on the same table. And I'm like, wait, I didn't even think of that. I was just like, hey, come on, let's just sit. I'm here, right? So I mean, that was one of the first things that I saw. And then and this is like the first year of me practicing. And then after that, I realized like, I need to do bigger things. And if I can have this platform where this family, this thing can never sit on the same table, and I was able to do that. To me, being born here, it wasn't a big deal, but for her, probably being her 70s now, to see that she didn't think that it was possible in her lifetime, right? So what else can I do to affect younger women and also women in general, to help them have a better understanding and also to feel better about our culture and religion? So one of the things that I've been doing for approximately 10 years now is that women who are divorcees, sometimes if their clan is super traditional, if they never remarried and they're in the clan, so let's say they're from the Lee clan and they were married to the Yangs, but then they're divorced and they're back to the Lee. So then sometimes, like during the funeral, I remember people of my mom's generation, which is like 70s and late 60s right now, would always say, oh, I can't divorce him. I have to stay in this abusive relationship because when I pass away, I'm going to be a wandering spirit. And then I told myself, no, I'm a shaman. I can do something about this, right? So, and it wasn't just overnight. I'm a very cautious person. I researched, I talked to the elders and everybody, and no one can tell me why or that it would like ruin a clan. So I've been doing that for 10 years. So what I would do is, and it depends on the family how they want to handle it too, but what I would do is as simple. How does she go out? Right? Late now, or they call the ancestors and say, hey, she's no longer part of the family. So what do? I do a name performance to take care of any negative energy or anything that's following her from her husband's side. And then what we do is just hopefully, and then simple as that, her dad or brother, whoever, just money light Dana, and she's back. That's it. As simple as that. It's not hard. It doesn't take, and it doesn't cost like $2,000. No, it's like, it's simple. Anybody can do it. If she remarries, so what? Right? But if she doesn't, then now that if anything happens to her, that she will feel safe and secure, and she won't stay in an abusive relationship just because she's afraid that when she passed, she may be a wandering spirit.
And just to provide some context for listeners who aren't Hmong, when you get married, your spirit is actually transferred to your husband's side of the family. And so there's this fear within some of the older women and older folks that, if you leave your husband or if you divorce, then you don't have a clan or an ancestral lineage to go to in the afterlife. And so the service...
You don't have a place to stay.
You don't have a place.
To be afterlife.
They say if you divorce, you're still part of their clan, but then now your husband disowns you, and so he won't perform the right rituals to uphold your spirit
during your funeral.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you become a wandering spirit.
Yeah.
Some men would say, "Oh, but she has her son. Her son will do it," and then that's pretty patriarchal too. But now I think with Susan, bringing this up, and I think it's just a way for woman to feel at ease that, hey, yeah,
There's a possibility.
that I can
Because
have
that
too.
belief has always held people from leaving abusive relationships.
Yes. And also, it's very detrimental to a lot of Hmong sisters because they said, like, back to a term I used before, like, they're not going to do duck wall, they're not going to be part of your duck wall. They're always going to be moving to another duck wall or another Jining or another lineage, you know. And so I think, yeah, this is something that could be say, hey, it's doable, and look, we just need to do it.
It's not that hard.
It's doable.
Yes.
So you have already kind of talked to us about the Healing Life Center. So why don't you expand on that a little bit more? And then I know you also have a nonprofit, Uplift the Human Spirit. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
So, Uplift the Human Spirit, I created or I founded that nonprofit just to do good and in our community, and to kind of like give faith and hope back to our community. There's a lot of this like mistrust and a lot of things that were that have been mishandled or in our community. There's this like constant fear and not being able to ask for help or just not being seen. So for our nonprofit, we're located in Stockton. So one of the things that we do is every year we do a food pantry or food give out to our residents here, the Hmong residents there. And what we do, we focus on food that our people are more interested or what they desire, such as, you know, a bag of 50-pound rice, right?
Yeah.
So each family will get that along with, you know, like whatever it is that you think that a Hmong family would rather prefer. That's what we do. That's one thing that we do. We also do like the Hmong literacy program during the summer. Well, due to COVID, we haven't been operating, but what we do is, you know, we not only is it important for people to learn who they are, their history, and why they're here, but also we want to empower these students to be prideful of who they are.
Know yourself.
Right.
And your history.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Susan.
Thank you.
And, continuing to be a pioneer for all.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And definitely, if you guys are interested, check out Uplift the Human Spirit along with the Healing Life Center.
Thank you.
Again, this is Hmong-ish, a podcast produced by Hmong American Media, located in Sacramento, California, sponsored by Hmong Organizing for Progress and Empowerment Center, the Hope Center, along with Culture Through Cloth.